tends to have like a scary meaning for many of us. We think that, that have to be the type of person that never does anything wrong. You never have any temptations. You are just like, you are something special from God. And that is really, really very far from the truth. Being holy really means giving yourself to God, being set apart by Him for His purposes, which everybody should be doing. And I just want to talk about a little secret today that has something to do with that. A couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago, Linda gave a teaching about David, King David, and about Goliath. And if you remember, we brought in a 9-foot self-made statue or something, and she was talking all about how David killed Goliath. And every time we think about David, we think about King David and what a great ruler he was, and he wrote so many psalms, and he was so huge and so big and such a spiritual leader, and we just, what a legend David was in the Bible. It's just amazing legend, and that's how we think about it, and so you almost start thinking, well, when he first started walking, he probably started killing lions like right away. That's how that's how legendary he was. He just like mighty man of God and never had any problems, and it's really so far from the truth of what David's life was really like when he was young. So there was some kind of a secret that when I started really reading about David, there's some kind of a secret that David had that many of us miss. Many of us miss this little secret that he had, and it's really not a profound thing. It's a very simple thing, but it's a very secret. And if we look at his life when he was a child, I think we would be shocked, and I think we wouldn't put him on a pedestal that we do now. And because when we do that, we look at David and we consider ourselves to be ineligible to ever kill a Goliath. We look at him and this legend that he has, we think, I could never live up to that, so why bother? Why bother trying? We'll leave the Goliaths up for other people to take down. And that's really not what it's about. So if you have your Bibles or your Bible apps and you want to look at a couple of things, we're going to look at 1 Samuel chapter 15. It's actually chapters 15, 16, and 17, if you want to look in there. But I'm just going to try to paraphrase a lot of this for us. I want you to, in a little secret, if you read the book of Samuel, Samuel was a prophet. And when God spoke to Samuel to do something, he did it. But Samuel was a little weird in my book because he had a lot of power. And when he did things, that was it. That was all there is. And so that's what makes this story about David a little bit weird. One day Samuel walks up to the gates of Jerusalem, and the people guarding the gates were actually like, are you here in peace? You're not going to cause any trouble today? You're not going to... And because the reason why they're asking that is because one other time he walked up there and he said, hey, I'm here and I want to see King Agag or something from the next kingdom over. So they went and got him, and he comes in happily to see Samuel. Hey, Samuel, what do you want? And Samuel takes out his sword and cuts his head off. I consider that a little strange, So it's no wonder they had such, this guy Samuel, what's going on with him, So the story here in 1 Samuel 15 through 17 is that Samuel anoints Saul to be king over Israel. Saul. But Saul was a jerk. I'm obviously paraphrasing this. I don't think the Hebrew has a word for jerk. But Samuel was a jerk. And so God rejected him. God rejected Saul. And so God tells Samuel one day, he said, look, I'm firing Samuel, and I want you to take put oil in a horn, that's what they anointed with, and I want you to go to the house of Jesse. Jesse has 8 sons, and I want you to take a hold of, and I'm going to tell you which one of Jesse's sons I want you to anoint king when you get there. Okay? And here's where the really strange thing starts happening to me, is that Samuel shows up, everybody in Israel knows who he is, and Samuel tells Jesse, I want to see your sons, because I'm going to anoint one of them king, and Jesse only brings out 7 of the 8 sons. He only brings out 7. The youngest one, and the one stuck doing the worst job, or the meanest task job, the job that nobody wants, he's out doing his job. David's out tending sheep, and Jesse never even thinks about bringing David into the room for Samuel to look at. Don't you think that's a little bit odd? Here's a guy that's going to be a legend, and it never even occurred to Jesse that Samuel might want to see him. How many of us actually sometimes feel that way? We feel like we're the least of our family. I'm the stupidest person I know. I get the worst jobs. My parents don't really, they don't really, accolades. I don't get anything from them. And so Jesse takes a look at all the 7 sons, and he goes, somebody's missing. And so Jesse says, well, yeah, I do have one guy that's out, tending the sheep. Well, I need to see him. Now it even gets a little even stranger to me. Because like I said, Samuel was like, he was it. What he said goes. And so they bring David in before Jesse, and Jesse says, that's the man. That's the man. And he anoints him as king over Israel. So what do you think would happen next? Samuel would grab a hold of this king, take him back to Jerusalem, take him into the throne room and say, Saul, you're fired. David, here's the throne. Get to work and straighten things out. That's what you would think would happen. But that's not what happened. He anoints him king over Israel and then leaves. Where does David go? Jesse says, David, get back to the sheep. He's out tending sheep again. He's like, what? He's the king of Israel. He's out tending sheep. Nobody had any respect for David. He was like the least, the unimportant, the insignificant. And Jesse's thinking, Samuel's out of his mind. He's obviously not king of Israel. You need to go back to the sheep. And it says that if you look at in chapter 16, verse 7, the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For God sees not as man sees. Man looks at the outward appearance. The Lord looks at the heart. That's just so important to this whole dynamics. God looks at the heart. And then if you look at verse 12, it said, when they brought him in, he was ruddy, with beautiful eyes and handsome appearance. The word ruddy, most of the times it's translated slightly red. Slightly red. So it looks like David was a redhead, and he wasn't, tall. He was handsome, but he wasn't very tall. So there was things about him that he's the youngest of the family, and nobody seems to care that he got anointed king of Israel. I can only imagine what his 7 brothers were saying and doing to him after Samuel left, and he had to go back to the sheep. Oh, you think you're king of Israel now. Yeah, they probably beat him up a few times just to show him, we're the older guys here, we're bigger, we're tougher, and you're the youngest. And if it was like my brothers, they probably beat him up a few times just to let him know, don't get too opposite yourself, don't get on yourself. I find that this is amazing thing that if you look in verse 19, so what starts happening to Saul is once David got anointed king, what happened to Saul was God removed protection from Saul. And Saul began to get plagued and terrorized and tormented by demons. And so one of Saul's servants said, what we need? We need a musician who knows God that can keep the demons at bay for your life. And one of his servants said, he said in verse 18, behold, I have seen a son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, who is a skillful musician, mighty man of valor, a warrior, and one prudent in speech, and a handsome man. And if that's not enough, the Lord is with him. If all these things are true, I'm even more confused now than I was before. Because this guy knew about David, and he's still out tending sheep, and nobody will pay any attention to him. I don't get it. And then what happens is, Jesse says, they went and get him, and Jesse said, okay, I guess you got to go take care of Saul. And so now he is playing, as the king of Israel, now he's playing instruments to keep Saul protected. Wait a minute, you know what? It gets really even more weird. If you look at chapter 17, verse 15, chapter 17, verse 15, it said David went back and forth from Saul to tend his father's flock. So he's in Saul's house at one time and playing instruments to keep the demons away from him, but he's still got to go back and tend the sheep. This doesn't make any sense at all. It's completely against our culture. He's with the flock. I was reading this and I'm thinking, are you kidding me? He's a warrior. God's with him, and yet he's got to go back and forth, run errands, help out and so forth. This is really amazing to me. when the Philistines came upon the scene, and Saul called an army together to fight them, 3 of David's brothers had to go to war and be some of the warriors there. 3 of his brothers. Guess what Jesse asked David to do? Hey, could you bring those guys some food? You're the littlest of the family and you're very unimportant. Just bring those guys some food. He's not being taken seriously. If you get anything out of this is a very short teaching today, but the secret is coming. Somebody's phone's on the floor, don't step on it. It says that God, I read this by an evangelist, name is Sisney. He wrote down, God doesn't so much look at what we are or what we're doing as much as how we are doing it. God doesn't so much look at who you are or what you're doing, but how you're doing it. That's extremely important. That's David's little secret. Whatever it was that he was told to do, he was going to do it to the best of his ability. Even if he is the king of Israel, he's still got to tend sheep. I think that whether you are 10 years old or you're 80 years old, this is the principle that you really should take away from the story of David. It's all about the way you, if you're 10 years old, how are you cleaning up your room? How are you taking the trash out? You know? How are you with mowing the lawn? Are you leaving the little things around the edges because, you don't want to bother? Are you like putting, 50% or 70% or 80% into everything that you do and you're not really doing it your all? How do you treat your friends? How do you treat your family, your siblings and your parents? Do you say what you mean and mean what you say? Are you honest in everything you do? What do you do when the boss isn't looking? What is it that you're doing when the boss isn't looking? What is it that's going on? When David was tending sheep, and he's got a couple hundred sheep out there, when the lion came around, if it was me, I could have said, we could spare one. We could spare a sheep for the lion. I don't think I really want to take on the lion. That's a lot of work, and I might get hurt. Let's spare one of them babies, and that'll hold them over for a week. But no, David's out there. He's got the lowest job of his family, and he's doing it to the fullest. He's learning from God. And God knew who he was and what he was from that. Proverbs 18 says that a man's gift makes room for him, but it says it's his character and his faithfulness that stays. It's his character and his faithfulness that stays. God knew that David had faults, just like we all do. He knew that David was going to lust and have a problem with Bathsheba, and he knew that David had faults. It has nothing to do with it. He was faithful in the things all those little things, and that was his secret, his faithfulness. Because we've been saying this for months and months. It's not about us just being good people and going out there and saying, I go to church and I'm a good person. There's a lot of people out in the world that can say, I'm a good person too. It really has nothing to do with it. What sets us apart and the holiness of God is that when God sees our faithfulness, he backs us up. So that the natural thing that you do, that God leads you to do, then God puts supernatural power on it. So, when David shows up, he was just being faithful to his God. He said, you're not going to talk to my God that way. All God did was tell David to basically throw a stone at him. Let me tell you something, a little bit about slingshots and stones and physical. If you're a 9-foot giant, your skull is thick enough to withstand a stone from a slingshot. It's not going to have an effect. It might be like a horsefly bite to you, and you're going to get really mad, and you're going to do something about it. That's the point here. Because of his faithfulness, God took something in the natural. He said, do that, and then God made it and turned into a missile. That's what we all need in our life. We need to do the natural thing to our spouse and to be kind and loving, and then God will anoint. We need to do all those things, being faithful in those natural things, and God will back us up. And that's what we need. Again, that evangelist, he said, quote, "We think David became great because he slew Goliath. But greatness is not doing one thing in a big way, but doing every little thing in a great way." I'm going to repeat that. We think David became great because he slew Goliath, but greatness is not doing one thing in a big way, but it's doing every little thing in a great way. It's the faithfulness that does it. What about us when it comes to this stuff? Are some of us sitting around waiting for something special to happen so that, everything will become better again? Maybe some of us are waiting to win the lotto, and then we can make everything right. We can do this and do that and bless somebody, and maybe we're waiting for that moment. There's the old saying, waiting for my ship to come in so I have my opportunity. Instead of being faithful in the little thing that God has in our lives right now. It's right now. We're waiting for better circumstances. Well, if I can just get this fixed, and if I can just get that and just get that. God's calling us to be faithful right now. Faithful against temptation. Faithful in all those little things. Faithful to sit before Him on a regular basis. Just faithfulness to do that. So I just want to leave this with you today, is that's David's secret, was faithfulness in the little things. And God backs him up. And that's what we need in our lives.